Kevin McCarthy doing exactly what you're talking about, which was really excusing the hush money payments. Take a look.
This is if it's a finance campaign, those are fines. Those aren't impeachable in the process.
Well, that's your concern. You say you're not concerned about the check. If there's no problem with these checks, if there's no problems with the reimbursement, then why did the president lie about it for so long?
You know, you could ask that question to the president, but this is a personal issue, and why would most people not go to the American public about this? You've seen politicians do this exact same thing in the past. So, to me, they're trying to find a case for a problem that doesn't exist.
It's a crime. That would be it's a crime. And, I mean, beyond Kevin McCarthy obviously having a very sort of wide margin for human behavior and what's okay. It's a crime, Nick. I mean, is this where we are? What's your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, it's really important to point out to our viewers, Mika, that there are two different ways you can break a campaign finance law. So you can break it accidentally, basically, by having too many contributions from one person and then have to refund that. That is a civil violation. It is handled with a fine. That's not what this is. There's a second category, which is a felon, which is a crime, an act of crime, which is to knowingly break the campaign finance law. That's what we're talking about with Cohen and the hush money and the president. And when you specifically go out and break the law in a knowing way, that's a criminal act. It's not handled with fines. It's prosecuted in a court of law. So, you know, fundamentally, we're talking about criminal behavior by a president, a sitting president now, and a top aide, which is an important and critical thing. It can't be brushed off with this talk of fines, accidents. It's not meaningful.
Well, Michael Steele, you ran the Republican Party and understand the importance of what Nick just said. It is a felony. I have known people, and I'm sure you have known people too, that were sent to jail for committing far lesser acts of intentionally trying to hide campaign contributions. And Kevin McCarthy certainly has to have known people, if he's been in politics, that got in trouble and actually got sent to jail for doing things far less than what this president has done. And yet Kevin McCarthy, the head of the Republican Party in the House, says this is nothing. I'm not worried about the fact that it appears that he has committed a felony, that Southern District of New York is investigating him for committing a felony, and we now have a check that proves he was part of a conspiracy to commit a felony. Ladies and gentlemen, your Republican Party.
Yeah, well, what I loved in that moment was when George Stephanopoulos, shot back at him. It's like, well, but the president, lied about this. So if this is no big deal, as you're saying it is, why did he and everyone else lie about it? And the look on Kevin McCarthy's face said it all. He had no answer to that. Well, I guess you could ask the president that. No, we're asking you because you just sat out here on national television and basically said it's okay. And Kevin McCarthy knows, and everybody else knows, that these campaign violations are serious, even, as you noted, Joe, the ones that are accidental are serious. I've worked with candidates. I've had campaigns in the past that have had donors give too much. And yes, you have to deal with that. You have to deal with the fines. But when you have a deliberate effort to undermine the integrity of the electoral system by skirting the law deliberately, the consequences are huge, and Kevin knows that. But what you see here, Joe, in this new Republican Party, this Trump Republican Party, is we take the very strong lines and barriers that have been put in place, the rule of law, if you will, which applies to all things, behavior and situations, and we stretch it just a little bit wider, a little bit further, to give Donald Trump as wide a berth of excuse and explanation as possible. The test will come, what happens in the future when the next Democratic president decides to go to the barriers to the extent that Republicans have gone and say, well, wait a minute, this is not a campaign violation. This is just a small thing. This is not a problem. Well, no. Why are you making such a big deal? And then what will they say? Because they've stretched that barrier so far that now it's distorted.
It's a felony, yeah.
Yeah, it's a felony.
I just think maybe for these Republicans who continue to do this, if there's one part of Michael Cohen's testimony that you might want to consider believing from last week, it would be if you follow Donald Trump blindly, as he has, you'll end up where he's going. And he meant that from the bottom of his heart. And there's a long list of people who already are in that situation, including him.
This ends badly.
This ends badly. These are words we've used before. We used them really soon, Joe, as we were watching this happen. This ends badly.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.